I can accept believing certain things with a childlike innocence. I can accept the church and the body of saints that I need to live in community, but I know they're not perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to hold them up to such. Mm-hmm. I can accept that I, as an individual within the faith, because my faith is also very individual, I can say, I don't know about that. What about this? And it all fits together. And, not all things are totally logical about what God does. Sometimes miracles cannot be placed into a box like that. And so being able to accept those with an open hand is powerful.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Caroline Howard, a biblical counselor and certified life breakthrough coach.
And I'm Chris Oneth, marriage and family therapist and executive director of Downey Counseling Associates.
Welcome to our next question, where we attempt to answer the questions of life through conversations in psychology and Christianity.
Remember, this is a place of discovery and definitely not the final answer.
In front of a live studio audience, and everyone's like, yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
A laugh track.
So
That's what we need.
Oh,
it's great. Now, the laugh track is, there's a few sitcoms where they're bringing it back.
Yes, there is now.
Which I don't know how I feel about that.
I'll tell you.
It throws me off.
One of the greatest things to watch is to go on YouTube and look up, Friends without the laugh track.
Oh my gosh, really?
And they just look absolutely insane and deranged at everything they're doing.
My gosh.
It turns it into a horror movie because there's just these awkward silences.
Oh, that is hilarious.
See, now I want to go watch
and they
that.
say scary things, but there's no laugh after them. So then they're creepy. It's great. Yeah.
Well, now that is funny. Mm-hmm. So that is an interesting phenomenon, the laugh track. I mean, for the most part, you kind of grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
Where so many sitcoms, they had this laugh track. I'm curious as to where it started. I don't know that we have that on the ready. Caleb, you're not sitting in front of the internet?
I don't.
We need you as a point of reference, my friend.
I mean, just, a lot of shows, sitcoms had live studio audiences with all
That's
the interaction
true.
and everything. Now it's
That's
probably
true.
more canned. I don't know if they're filming in front of live audiences.
Yeah.
COVID. I blame COVID.
Right.
Everything's COVID's fault.
Come on.
I think that's it, though. I think that because there were so many live studio audiences, and so you had that, and then so now you just want to go, why did they stop doing that?
Yeah. I mean, in some cases now it's seen as something cheesy, canned laughter or fake laughter, right?
Oh, are you reading this? Are you Googling it?
Sure am.
The Google
Yes,
monster.
I'm sure. I sure am. I'm not getting a date though.
I don't think I can ever watch a show with a laugh track. It just doesn't. I don't like it.
It says sitcoms and sketch comedies from the 50s to the late 70s. Douglas laughter decreased by the 80s upon the development of stereophonic laughter. Oh, geez. Now we're getting into it. Single camera sitcoms eliminated audiences altogether.
Single camera.
Yeah.
There's a multi-camera studio.
Yes. So then I think about The Office, who it didn't have a laugh track, but you knew just because they had that, what they call the fourth wall, where the actor looks at the audience or includes the audience into the joke.
Yeah.
Breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall, thank you. And so The Office was very much like that. And so it was based on their looks and their body language.
Yeah.
That would bring you into it. And so you knew that was the joke.
Huh.
Boy, we could do a whole episode on this stuff.
I know. Well, how
did this get started?
It made me want to change my icebreaker question because then I want.
It's too late now.
I know. Because then I would want to see who's everybody's favorite comedian. I don't know why I went to comedian.
Oh.
But it makes me think about comedians. I don't necessarily have a favorite one.
Uh-huh.
But I like funny people who laugh at themselves. Like they tell the joke and they're cracking up. It's probably because I laugh at myself.
Okay.
But it makes me laugh harder.
Excessive laughter at yourself means you find yourself the funniest person.
Sometimes I am.
And that could be awkward too.
No.
Have you been?
Because at least I'm laughing.
Have you been to see any comedians?
Not live. No. Okay.
I was gonna say,
Caleb thinks I'm funny.
I don't often laugh at myself.
He was thinking of something else.
But often my jokes are very understated.
Ah, yes.
And it's only humor that I appreciate. And so then it goes like unnoticed. And I'm like, well, that was a little awkward that I just said that and no one knew what I was talking about.
Well, in fact, you're making yourself laugh in that sense too. But it's not.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's not out there gregarious making yourself laugh.
Which is why, like, if I say something funny and no one else is laughing and I'm laughing at myself, I don't feel like no one else is laughing.
Well, and then
I hear myself.
Then people know it's a joke too, because otherwise they're like, what did he just say? What was that?
You know, that's interesting. The times when I make a joke and I don't laugh, I've had situations where I've had people I couldn't tell if you were being serious or not. Like, I guess I have that face.
I'm like, do you have that face?
The silence is deafening.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
We need a laugh track in here.
I mean, my kids all the time will be like,
point.
I know. My kids tell me all the time, like, you think you're hysterical, huh, Mom? I'm like, I don't think it. I'm funny.
Oh, there you go.
I make myself laugh.
What has always stand-up comedy has always fascinated me. And actually, when I've taught psychology to college students, I've included a little bit on stand-up comedy. I mean, obviously, it's not an entire day lecture, but the idea of stand-up comedy is in real time, you are measuring what works and doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's a very good, I don't know, it's probably long gone off of Netflix, but there was a very good documentary on Seinfeld. And they had one scene where he's sitting there and he has all these pages from a legal notepad. He's sitting outside and he has all these pages from a legal notepad surrounding him, like spread out.
Yeah.
And he said, these are all the jokes that didn't make it.
Wow.
And it showed his process, because his process is you get up there and you make a joke and you get real-time response from the audience. And if you don't, well, then you either tweak the joke or you make it go away. But then it also depends on the audience and what potential city you're in, what region you're in the country, what country you're in.
Yeah, right.
And so these are all things that comedians have to fully be aware of. So Seinfeld actually made the comment that he said, comedians are good with everyone, but also good with no one.
Interesting.
And what he meant by that is they tend to be, in his generalization, they tend to be better speaking to a group of people or an audience instead of one-on-one.
That makes sense.
Because one-on-one is more uncomfortable.
Right. In the audience, at least one or two people are going to get it and think it's funny.
Okay.
I
was going to say, I feel like we just got to do an episode on this at some point, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about here.
There's plenty.
That was Caleb's nice way of cutting us off.
Oh, I see.
Well, I don't want to cut off your final statement here.
Well, the audience is an expanse of, yes, one or two people may laugh at the joke, but at the same time, there's not that direct face-to-face eye contact connection that can be vulnerable and uncomfortable.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's why sometimes you have people that are great public speakers and awkward one-on-one.
Man, it makes me think of like Robin Williams too.
Yeah.
And like everyone, sees him performing, sees him on stage, but it's not like the connection to really know what's going on.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay. Wow. Well,
okay. So do we want to do a question, or we just,
well, that was the
it?
question. What was your favorite comedian?
Yeah, let's roll with that since we got on that track.
Your favorite comedian? Okay.
One of the favorites. You don't have to say my absolute favorite.
I don't know. I have to look him up. That's my whole thing.
Why did you ask the question?
I really have never been much of a stand-up comedy person, but there are a couple people in recent years that have stood out to me. One of whom is John Mulaney.
Okay.
I think is genuinely hilarious and takes very uncomfortable subjects and makes them very, very funny.
I'll have to check it out.
Oh, yeah. He's like the only guy that I've gone to watch specials of on a consistent basis. And then another one is Bo Burnham,
Burnham, yeah.
I love just his way he takes on different social issues we're facing with.
That's awesome.
Technology, mental health, all that stuff. He's just very real and vulnerable, and also very
that's cool,
knowledgeable. And so
are these both heady guys, on the more intellectual end?
Bo Burnham is, I would say.
Okay, I'll check. I think I've heard stuff from him.
Mm-hmm. He did a Netflix special a year or two ago called Inside as well, which was during COVID, and man, that blew my mind. But it's
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that, and there was a bunch of, he really, I know
he was locked in this
Yes, and he did all these like artistic.
Did a lot of music stuff, and yeah, it's really good. But it also really like brings me into a really dark space. But then it also kind of helps bring you out and give you hope. So.
I think my son told me about that. My son loves my oldest son Elijah loves stand-up comedy. Matter of fact, he took me to see a comedian. I cannot recall the guy's name.
So he's not your favorite?
Well, he was good.
Okay.
Now the gal opening for him was super uncomfortable and overly sexual, but other than that. It was a good show. I've been to see Jim Gaffigan.
Okay.
I do like Seinfeld. Part of that special did it for me, where it was like, kind of the nuts and bolts of how it's done.
Yeah.
I like observational comedy, that sort of stuff. Jim Gaffigan's McDonald's, his whole spiel on McDonald's is amazing. I'm not going to get into it.
But we're going to have to check that out because I don't think we're familiar.
Yeah.
No. See, and I'm not I don't really watch a lot of comedy, like really at all.
Oh.
Because I think a lot of times, and maybe I just haven't watched the right person, like it could get, there's like a line and it gets too crude and then I'm just like, that is not funny to me.
Yeah.
But there's a guy right now, Matt Rife. He's a younger guy.
I've seen.
And I found him on Instagram. And so I just watched his little blurbs on Instagram. And he just cracks me up because he literally just like talks to the audience members and makes cracks on them. And it is
So it's in like real time? Like,
it's in real time, yeah.
What I mean by that is it doesn't seem like necessarily a script.
No.
That to me is like true comedy.
Because somebody will say, he'll be like, what's your name? And they'll say the name. And his face is just like, you set me up for so much good stuff right here.
Wow.
And then he just says it. And a lot, there is inappropriate stuff, but he'll even be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get canceled. I should have known. That was terrible. I'm so sorry. But he's cracking up the whole time. And so is everybody else.
That is almost like a unique, like you were saying, like comedians don't really interact with the audience. They're kind of speaking.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
That kind of is when you get into
does.
the observational comedy where it's like one-on-one and you're like, going back and forth with somebody, learning more about them.
Yeah.
There almost is like a different kind of connection
Yeah.
that's formed
And
there.
he actually has a Netflix special coming out. So I'm really excited to watch a whole set of his and not just little Instagram blurbs.
Yes.
Okay.
There you have it. Okay.
Well, now we're going to get serious.
Oh, are we? Really?
Cut the laugh
That sounds
track,
not
everybody.
fun.
So our next question is, what are the stages of faith?
Oh, boy.
So we're kind of diving back into where we
where did this
kind
come
of
from?
left off, before Thanksgiving, we were doing stages of development.
Yes, moral development.
too.
Yeah. And just different stages. And so this was kind of the last one and we just never got
it's
around
a
to it.
leftover.
But it's a good one.
It's so good.
It sure is.
So
Why are we talking? Why is this important? Why talk about this?
that's a great question. Why don't you answer that?
Oh, geez.
Because you're the one who said, let's do stages of faith. Caleb has an answer.
I am so excited about this because I think it's something we don't really consider. We think of faith as, maybe we see it as like a journey as we get older. But we kind of see it as like, I feel like we tend to see it as stagnant, where it's like, you have faith.
Yeah, kind of binary, one or the other.
But we don't really see how it evolves along different stages, and along with like how our brains develop and how our realization of where we fit in community is involved and all that stuff. So
true.
I think it's so important because otherwise you think everyone is at the same level of faith when they're really not at the
Absolutely, totally, and
same point in the journey.
So there's that like individual development of faith, but also like according to age, right? And so even this is a, I guess, cautionary thing for parents to be able to be like, okay, I'm at a certain level of faith, and I have to understand my child may not be at the same level, or B, even as children get older, they may graduate to a certain level of faith that parents stay at. Past where parents are, is what I mean to say.
See, and then I was thinking of when I was reading through these, because we're going to do Jane Fowler stages of faith. Is what
Jane or James?
James.
Oh, there you go.
Don't start with me.
I didn't. I thought I heard Jane.
We already had this conversation. Which there's a link to his stages of faith in the show notes. So if you want to click on the link and kind of follow along, you can do that.
Play along at home.
But I was, follow along. Not in your car, please. Not while you're driving. But as I was reading these, and especially like stage 1, and I know we're going to get into each one, I kept thinking of how God tells us to have childlike faith. And like, okay, so how does that dive into this?
Yes.
And if we're looking at that first stage.
Yeah.
Then we should never evolve beyond that first stage.
There you go.
Well, I mean, like we should.
That clinches it.
And yet we should still hold that, right? Where I think like in stages of moral development, no. We want to move past all the stages.
Good point.
And leave the past stage behind.
So, yeah, I would say that to your point, Caroline, that each of these stages actually has a benefit and a drawback.
Yeah.
Right. And
True.
so it's important, even as, whatever stage we're in, not to look at the other stages and go tisk, tisk, and poo poo, but to be able to say, okay, I can accept you at that level and I don't have to like correct or whatever.
Right.
I'm just speaking in Chris Oneth terms, like I would act. It's like, no, you've got to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So how do we want to do this? Are we going to just talk through each stage briefly?
So, okay, we're talking about essentially there's two kind of sides to this.
Okay.
And it's based on the same stuff. So the primary work here is James Fowler. And off of James Fowler, another guy came along, M. Scott Peck. And just as a spoiler alert, I will say this: M. Scott Peck is a psychiatrist, and he has some interesting ideas on faith and Christianity. He is a professed Christian, or I'm not sure if he's still living, but. Mm-hmm. So his statement was, in doing the therapeutic process with clients, he would notice a couple of things. He would notice clients come to see him and then go through a process of therapy, and then they come with faith, and they end up losing faith through the process and then moving on. Okay. But at the same time, he saw people without faith come and see him go through the therapeutic process and then gain faith. And so this got his mind spinning. And so he then looked, researched all this stuff, found James Fowler, and loved his stuff, and had a riff or a variation on James Fowler's stuff about the different stages of developmental faith.
Okay.
So having said that, I guess the next question is, what are the stages?
What are the stages? It was fun, excuse me, reading through these because I could see my own life.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I could see me in a week. That was Tuesday.
Right, that was Tuesday. Okay.
Totally. How so?
Well, I don't know. Maybe as we walk through them, I could just like... Okay, so I could say how so. I was raised, I was going to say Catholic. I was not raised Catholic. I was raised Baptist.
Wow. All of a sudden weird stuff is popping
My mother
in your
was
head.
raised Catholic. My dad was raised Lutheran.
Oh.
They got together
and made a Catholic.
And made a Baptist.
That is hilarious. They tried to convert each other.
They tried. Yes, there you go. And that's where they ended up. And so, especially the stage, and we'll get talking about this when they talk about the box. Because I was definitely a box kid.
Yes.
Raised in the box. And I remember that aha moment of like the lid coming off the box and me peeking out and like, what? There's other stuff out here?
Wow. And
then being able to question my own faith.
Yes.
And what I do believe and what I don't believe. And I don't know. That was really cool.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So essentially, Fowler has 8 stages. Here it says 6. Why does it say 6? Anyway.
I think...
Go ahead.
There's the 6 that I see here, and then there's a pre-stage. Kind of makes 7. I don't know what the 8th stage is that you have.
Yeah, I thought there was 8. Maybe I'm making stuff up. Look it up, kids. Leave comments in the comments section and correct us, please. We need it. Okay, so going off of this, there's 6 for Fowler, and there is essentially 4 for Peck, and I've heard Peck for a long time and known about his 4, which I just explained. Anyway, they have different names for them. And the first 2 stages for Fowler would be intuitive projective and mythical literal. So Peck has combined those 2 into chaotic antisocial. Now, it all applies. Oh, my faith right now is kind of intuitive, projective, mythical, literal, and chaotic antisocial. That's how I would describe it. Well, think about it. Okay, so this stage is very childlike. Mm-hmm. It's very mythological. It's very stories from preschool. Mm-hmm. It's very face value, and it's also very individualistic. So we hear a story as a kid, and we're like, of course, that's yeah.
I'm like, Jonah the well, Noah
I was just
and
thinking
the ark.
Jonah, except the mental
Moses,
block, I wanted to say Noah, and that was not true. Okay,
Moses goes in a basket. The simplified Sunday school version.
Yeah, a guy gets swallowed by a whale and spit up later. Sure.
I mean, I can still picture the felt thingies that went on the board.
Flannel graph? Is that what it was? Flannel graph?
Ooh, flannel graph.
Wow,
this
that's
guy.
so technical.
So the other interesting component, and actually have something written down here, is that in the first stage, in this phase, faith is often held in a system that is informal and mythical with little structure. So essentially, it's what the individual believes, and there's not a lot of digging into, does this fit? So parts are forming, but there's no cohesion.
Okay.
And we'll give some examples of that. Practitioners of this phase often act according to their own impulses, while at the same time chastising others for doing the same thing, often citing fairness. That's not fair.
Yeah.
That you got more ice, you got a bigger piece of the cookie.
Yeah.
Because certainly, if I would have had to choose, I would give myself the bigger piece of the cookie.
You would.
It's very in line with the stages of moral development that we looked at, too.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So belief is both surface and unstructured with little depth. Much of this type of faith is derived from stories and accounts gathered and not examined. So you think about, kids believed in Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. It's like, Santa Claus. Doesn't even occur to me there's no understanding of time, of space, of speed, of all the things, numbers of people in the world. There's no understanding of that. And so there's no question that there's that Santa Claus exists. And so God is conceptualized and as, okay, this I know that there's a God. I'm not sure all the ins and outs of it though. So
I think another fascinating thing I remember in my education when I was studying youth ministry, I went through Fowler stages. And one of the things about stage 1 and 2 is that people in those stages tend to take things at very concrete and literal.
Yes.
And don't think abstractly. And I remember one thing we learned was man, when you see a children's message happen in front of the church where you invite all the kids up, and then an adult goes and tells a story, and so many times in those you have a metaphor of a balloon and what it does, or I don't know, something like that, and it's adults love it, but it's really not helpful for the kids because they don't understand the metaphor aspect of it. Usually when they're in those stages, it's
right.
This is very literal. Okay, so my faith is a balloon? I don't get that. Or
yes.
Whatever. So I just find that funny.
So yeah, and even in some sections of the Bible that are written as just poems.
Yeah, or parables.
And parables, exactly.
Yeah.
We have to,
Well, think about that. Go back to your Sunday school days, if we can. You're not really getting a lot of parables in those Sunday school stories. That's why you get the well and Jonah, Noah and the ark, Moses in the basket.
Zacchaeus.
He was a wee little man.
But this gets me into the whole Noah's Ark thing in preschool, and my buddy, former pastor Jim Applegate, who we were at one of these camps where they had a large, very large ark-looking thing. Oh. And it was a play area for kids.
Oh, that's cool.
And he's like, I never understand why they make it a kid's story, especially with how many people Noah had to beat off the side of the boat.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's like it's a kind of a mass murder
and
story.
Noah's like rooting for these guys to just be burned with fire, wiped off the face of the earth. And
by the way, it's mass killing. Murder is of an innocent person, and killing is not.
Killing,
so
right.
there you have it.
My
okay.
bad.
Okay.
I want to point if we're moving on really quick, because Peck says how people that are stuck at this age are usually self-centered.
Yes.
And find themselves in trouble due to their unprincipled living. And that to me is chaotic and antisocial.
It is, but imagine an adult living like a preschooler.
Right. Like
it's
you
like, I want that thing, I'm going to take it.
A preschooler is self-centered. They just don't know any better.
No, they're
but
self-centered.
Yes, and I mean, they totally are, but we don't go around like labeling them. But yeah, an adult would be self-centered.
So another consideration in this is to actually kind of suss out some benefits and drawbacks to each stage. And so I suppose, obviously the drawback would be you're not thinking communally, you're thinking selfishly, you're not thinking, systematically or logically, you're thinking in the impulse of whether or not it's a delightful story or something you want to believe or not believe. Right? You're not sitting with it and wrestling with it. That could be a drawback. A benefit to this stage actually is that, as it says in God's word, to have a childlike faith is to just kind of have a trust and a belief in the way certain things are. Mm-hmm. And it may be a balance where, yes, some things we trust and we believe it, and we may not have the answers to it right now, but we'll get them later. And so there you go. Benefits and drawbacks to that particular stage.
Okay, I like it.
Okay.
All right, moving on.
Stage 3 and 4 for Fowler, which are I'm going to stick with stage 3 for Fowler and then 2 for Peck. And this is my favorite stage. No, it's the stage we see most, favorites? I would say, and that's the synthetic conventional, or as Peck calls it, formal institutional. And that is a faith with a certain amount of structure to it. Yeah. And I think you described it, if I can be so bold, as the box.
Yep.
And this stage of faith thrives in structure. Mm-hmm. But it not only thrives in structure, it thrives in community. So it's a moving from individuality to understanding that, okay, I need others in the community. This goes as far as to say, I don't really believe outside the community. In other words,
outside the box.
I fit in my tribe. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm most comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we see that this is all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And I feel like this is where, I don't know, this makes me think of religiosity.
Uh-huh.
And stuff like that, where even, what's outside of the box would be different religions. And that's not okay, which...
Sure.
In the Baptist world I was raised in, that was very much like that. Like Lutherans were bad, Catholics were bad. Everything was wrong if it wasn't in that box of. So
wait, you're not just talking about different religions, you're talking about different denominations.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've heard that of some denominations that are like.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I came out and then started going to a non-denominational church.
What kind of wizardry was that?
Box. It was so refreshing to hear a pastor, Jim Applegate, once again, say, I go to lunch with other pastors and we talk about our churches. And even one time when I was on staff there, we went to another church's staff meeting and it was like,
you're like, what?
We can mix
the enemy
like
camp.
this. I didn't know that, but it was so great.
Well, that's interesting because there is safety in the community. Right. There's not a challenge necessarily. We tend to get in echo chambers. And I think this very much reflects some of the political back and forth that we have these days is, people's belief structure is in sort of a second stage of their faith, which is, it's formal, it's institutional. But it can also lead to A, worshiping the institution, and B, especially, putting up on a pedestal the leaders of said institutions.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the risks in this formal institutional stage. Mm-hmm. I guess one of the benefits, is being able to say, hey, this is my group, and these are the people that I jive with.
Yeah.
That incidentally, this stage of faith, this second stage, thrives the most in institutions like church, the military, prison, because in a sense it eschews individuality. So individuality can be scary.
Yeah.
And it confirms, like, okay, this is what we're doing right now. This is what we believe. And so now the other part of this is it can be contagious. If we look over the person in our tribe is doing these certain things and they believe this certain way, and we're like, well, this is my tribe, and so I'm going to do what they do. And so Mel and I, when in our younger days, we were very much caught up in this in the church we were going to. We had phases where, they wanted to get rid of, you had to get rid of your secular music. How many times did we bring a big fat stack of all of our awesome
so much money
music CDs to have them burned or discarded?
Man.
Along with books,
I'm
sure.
I heard so many stories of that recently too.
Really?
Especially people who are new to the faith.
Yeah.
And are like really, I feel like this stage really fits where it's like, okay, I need this church community. Like I need to be all in. I need to hear like all the things, and like I need to reshape my life and to fit this. And I've been seeing that in people who are newer coming to the faith, and it's like, it's cool to some extent.
Yeah, it gives stability.
It almost shocks me how much like people want to go all in when they first come to Christ, and like, I don't know.
It's the pendulum swing, right? We've been over here doing all this bad stuff. Now I got to swing clear to the other side and do everything right until they figure out how to get it.
There's a hunger to learn, especially from those authority figures. Who they see as like,
and they almost look to them as a god.
Yeah.
And
I can imagine if you've come from like chaos, if your life has been disordered, and this is what you see a lot of this in the addiction community, where it's been, very self-centered, very impulsive, I just meet my needs and I keep doing that, to this rest of, oh my gosh, this structure has walls and a roof and this feels safe. So definite benefits. Yeah. Definite. Okay, where are we? What are we doing? Stage 3.
4/3.
4/3. Yeah, whatever. No, it's 3. Okay, well, yeah. So Fowler would be 4.
Yep.
Peck would be 3.
Yep.
So Fowler calls it the individuative, reflective, and Peck calls it the skeptical individual. I guess those 4 words would very much fit, because this is the stage in which Fowler would see people come through, Peck would see people come into his office and go through the therapeutic process and come with faith, more than likely stage 2, the structure, and they would leave without faith, and that would be this stage, and it starts to question the institution it's under,
right,
and the people of the institution.
Right. I like that he says that this stage ends up being very non-religious, not non-spiritual.
Okay.
Right? Because this is where I remember this stage, and I'm still in a sense in this stage.
Oh.
And I remember that's when I broke out of that box completely and was like,
did you go off the rails?
Totally. I'm still off the rails. But it probably was one of the most spiritual times in my life of where I was getting this personal relationship with God and really finding out who he was to me.
And what I have here is that this tends to happen, not for everyone, but in that late adolescence of 18 to 22. I think especially around college age, when people are going off and living in a new community and being, exposed to people of different beliefs.
Right.
And now they're out on their own away from family.
Yes.
And I think this is where, a lot of parents get really scared of like, oh no, we shouldn't.
Most certainly they do.
Let them go, because then they're going to question. It's like, no, because that questioning is so important. It's very scary.
Yeah.
It sure is.
But if you're going to make that faith your own, then you have to go through that process of the individual. Yeah.
That's such a good point, because I think as parents, and being a parent now and having older children, I think I want them to have their own relationship with Christ. And I've kind of expressed that with my kids since they were little. And I want them to challenge me. Like, my married daughter and I, we don't agree on everything spiritually, but I know her love for Jesus and her heart for Jesus, and that's all that matters. Like, it's okay if we don't line up with everything.
Yeah, and a lot of parents get very scared, obviously. And it is a very scary time to kind of like watch your kids say, "Nah, that's not for me." And then, there's fear associated with that. And I know in my faith, this really challenged me when my kids would come to me and say, "No, I think this and think that." And then I would have my reactions and have to like measure that and see what is happening to me in that, once my world is not, once something in my world seems uncomfortable, what happens to me in my reaction, and what does that say about my faith?
Yeah.
And so, so I've had kids who are either in this stage or are circling back around to the stage 4. But I think in order to have a sort of depth, these stages need to happen, because at some point our kids need to stop just going off of our faith and what mom and dad said.
Yeah.
And start moving into, no, this is what I know to be true.
Yeah. It feels like a make or break. It's like, because they begin to question the things that they have assumed about faith and religion, and are testing those things to see, okay, do I really believe this is true? And for some, it's like, no, I need to reject that. That's not the way. And for others, it's like, wow, yeah, I really do see that effect. Or maybe I need to tweak my view a little bit, because now I'm seeing from a new perspective. So it can oftentimes, just make that faith so much stronger. Or it becomes a point where that person needs to step away, maybe not indefinitely, but for a time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing that I see interesting, I mean, having been on Facebook for a long time now, is I'm Facebook friends with a lot of people I used to go to church with, people who have walked away completely from the faith. But the fascinating thing is, they haven't necessarily moved to stage 3, where they're, in some ways, yes, that they kind of question the faith they came from. Really, it's about just finding a new tribe for their second stage of faith.
Okay.
And so, keep in mind, the second stage of faith doesn't know it's in that stage.
Yeah.
Like when we're in the box, we don't know we're in the box.
Right.
We think the box is like it.
Right.
And then we look at other people and we're
everybody
like, no,
the
you
box
don't know there's anything. And then the third stage of faith is like, there ain't no box and all this other stuff, but it's very like rejecting of even the box. Caleb, I think you make a good point where, some of those, like if some of these kids grew up in homes where, dad was the total patriarch and not in a good way, but a misogynist or a woman-hating patriarch, or very overpowering to his wife. And if, a young lady grows up in that and she's like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Well, then then she rejects the institution of marriage altogether. Well, then she's missing out on some richness, instead of just saying, wait a second, no, marriage is still sacred and ordained by God. How do I experience that in a context, in a system that I can feel loved and known and commune with God in that way by having a loving husband?
Yeah.
So, it's true.
I like that. I like that Valor puts reflective, because that's what a big thing I remember. All of a sudden, all those sayings, the Christian sayings that
let go and let God.
Yeah. God won't give you more than you can handle. Like, all of a sudden I found myself going to scripture and going, well, where is this? Where's the verse that coincides with this? And then being like flabbergasted of like,
what the heck?
This isn't scripture.
God helps those who help themselves.
Right.
What?
Right. And so it really was this reflective stage of all these things that I've heard and said.
Yes.
And then it just kind of became fun. And then other people would say those, and I'd be like, tell me where that's at. What scripture is that? Yeah.
Well, and that's a good point, because it's uncomfortable to examine the boat we're in.
Yeah, we just get right. My parents said this, or this is what my church said, and so this is what I say because it must be right.
Yeah.
And we don't stop and question that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. Okay. So stage 3 is that in a lot of cases a sort of loss of faith.
Yeah.
But it's a loss that actually might need to happen so that more is gained. All right. All right. So then we have Fowler's 5 and 6, and then Peck's